I'm a fan of fantasy, so I listen to Easy and Alan on their Just a Fantasy Fan podcast. Now here's Easy and Chris Allen.
And welcome to a Fantasy Fan Sportscast. Just one of the great shows on the Sportscrew Radio Network. And be sure to follow them on Twitter and iTunes at Sportscrew Radio. Sportscrew Radio Network, creating sports, fantasy sports, DFS, gambling content, Chris, 24/7, thesportscrew.com. Thank them for putting this out there and, helping people listen. Tonight, we're going to change it up. We're going to see what happens here, Chris. We talked about this. Okay. We've been doing this for a couple of years. We'll take a few minutes. This is the part that we're going to do away with, except for tonight. Does that make sense?
Yeah. We got to introduce the new parts to the listeners, and then we'll go from there.
And the old parts, maybe. We talked, and you know what? We're in the middle of the football season. I don't think people want our banter necessarily. They want information.
They want the good stuff.
Because thinking about it, that's what we want, right? I mean, that's what me and you want. We don't want to waste a lot of time, and we don't want to waste anyone else's time. And I might end up missing the banter part,
I miss it.
Yeah, we'll miss that. And we are still going to banter, but in a different way, meaning we will banter within the information we're talking about, I'm sure, because I'm going to, we'll have some questions and all that. But
all right,
I am Easy. That's Chris Allen. I'm a fan of fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris is a math guy.
I'm also a fan.
Guy. He's also a fan. Started as a fan, right? I'd assume you were a fan first. You didn't do math and then go, maybe I should play fantasy, right? Did you? What came first, the math of fantasy or the fan of fantasy?
The math. The fan of fantasy. It had to have been.
Well, that's what
because I was terrible. I mean, the first year. Let's see. I've only been doing. I don't go as far back as you do when it comes to fantasy, and I would say that for most folks that have been doing this, I don't go nearly as far back because I've only been doing it. So let's see. The first year that I did fantasy football, the starting running back for the Cincinnati Bengals was Ben Jarvis Green-Ellis. So that was about, let's say, 7 years ago.
You didn't draft him, did you?
No.
the math would have told you not to draft.
No, I still remember because my first round pick, the first year that I did fantasy football was Ray Rice, and that was when he was still good.
Right.
That wasn't the year that he got in trouble. But yeah, that was my first jump into fantasy sports. I got pummeled. I think I was like 12th, out of 12 teams. And I couldn't stand it. I needed to understand it more. So here we are.
All right. And that's what there's been people listening to for a long time. We have some listeners. I mean, that's good. Yeah. And we're going to find out if they were here for our banter or here for your information or my argument of your information. But you write multiple articles,
I do.
2 or 3 a week.
Apparently I'm good at it, or at least people like it to some degree.
And people are reading it. And I've started reading it, which is the bad part. I had to tell you that last time. I read a little bit here and there, and I'd follow your Twitter stuff and all that. But I didn't dive into it because I don't anybody's. I'm not even arguing you, meaning I usually am looking for quick hit things. I'm a podcast listener. I'm listening, and looking for, I just give me the information. I want give me a couple opinions on what quarterbacks to stream. Give me a couple, give me a couple people to drop. Give me a couple this, that. So I haven't, I didn't really ever dive into the whys or the whatever. I watch enough football, know enough football, and I listen to enough other people talk about it that I figured that was enough. Then I started reading your articles and reading, well, hey, here's somebody who's actually writing in-depth information on this stuff, and it's helping me. And maybe that's what we should do in the show. We should take the Chris Allen information, the analytics, and talk about it. Kind of what we were doing, the analytic and the fan, meaning, because I am going to question it in some cases, because some fans will, because some people don't, the numbers don't matter to them. It's still a feeling. It's still a gut, or it's this and that. And so we're going to go back and forth on that, I'm sure. So,
well, and as we talked about it last week, I mean, I love that about the process. I mean, I don't want to just, if people want to think of me as an analytics nerd, I don't want to just, trundle off to my mom's basement, play around with my spreadsheets, come up with an article and just leave it out there for you guys to take as gospel and just run off. Like, no, it's about having a conversation. I mean, I'm watching the same games that you guys are and just looking at the data afterwards and trying to figure out and trying to suss out, like, what are the best plays for the upcoming week. And let's have that conversation.
Right. And we both have poker background.
And
I'm guessing we're the same. We're probably different there too. I'm betting in poker. You're still a math guy.
No, absolutely. But there's still, get a couple beers in me, it just becomes all feel at that point, or no feel, I guess. With enough alcohol.
And I'm a feel. Read the table. You know, can I push that guy? Can I do that?
It's all variables, right? And
then I'll do some of the math. I'll. And when I'm honest, when I'm in a poker table, I'm how
many outs do you have? All that
to a point but when it comes to pot odds and all that, I look at pot odds and go, the odds are that pot's a lot bigger than my pot, so I want it. So that's my pot odds, I'll do those kind of things. So this is probably the last time or two we'll start the show with Banner. Because we just want to get into what we're going to do is, I'm taking your articles, reading them. We're going to highlight some things. We're going to, get into the details, of that information and take that. To me, now it's a useful show. And we might even, and we'll tell the people, we've always tried to be around an hour, sometimes more. We might find that this is a half hour. We might find it's 45 minutes. We might, the key to me is let's make it the most information based on the articles and the information you've spent a week studying, and give that to our listeners, and hope that helps them, and that they want to tune in every Wednesday night at 10 o'clock, or download us, any podcast catcher, iTunes, at a Fantasy Fan, or a Fantasy Fan Sportscast, and or Sportscrew Radio Network. All three of those are options where you can get the podcast and listen to the show, and then take the information with you. So, comments, questions. I'm Ezekiel at a Fantasy Fan. I
want all the questions,
Chris. Well, I'm talking questions about the show, meaning if people have questions about the show, if they like it, don't like it, want to see it do something different. Regular football questions. Hey, I'll make sure Chris, we'll do them on the show if you have them. Otherwise it's just, you're at Chris Allen FFWX.
Yes, sir.
And people can send him questions, or same thing. If you like the show this way better, at least during the season, I think we've decided that, let's give the people information and because once you get into the live fire of the regular season, people want the quick hits, right? They want who do I start? Who do I sit? Should I trade this guy? All that stuff. But me, I'm a researcher at heart. That's part of my actual real life job. I'm a research engineer. So not a research engineer, but I do engineering research. But either way, that's part of how I study the game. So that's where, if anybody that reads my work, I wind up writing these big long, walls of text
for some things that might take, just like maybe a little bit shorter to actually convey the same idea. Because I like to research things. I like to find out as much contextual data as possible in order to get my point across. So that's where during the summertime, or like especially in the off season, I mean, I'm minimum, I'd say 1,500 words like per article, because I like to get as much information into my articles as possible.
Well, before we start, I know normally at the end I ask everyone, or ask you where they can find your work. Let's do that now. Let's do it at the beginning of the show. So people that want to read your work, see what you're about and get the information direct, they can. So, where are your articles at? Where can people find you? What websites? Where you at?
Sure.
See your Twitter handle.
Yeah. I didn't put it in the, what is it? That thing right? Where am I at there? It's not there. Not today, but you can find me on Twitter, Chris Allen, FFWX, and we'll talk about the WX here in just a second. But 4 for 4, I do the weekly quarterback streaming article over there. So that comes out every Tuesday before waivers process. They have me do a couple of other things like throughout the year, because like today, I did we're doing a series, like a strategy series throughout the season, about what you do depending on the situation you find yourself in. So after week 4, we had a piece. It was like what to do after week 4. And we broke it down into 3 scenarios. Like one was if you're, so let's say like you're undefeated, and let's say maybe you're sitting at 2-2, so somewhere in the middle of the pack, and let's say you're 0-2, and then we worked out like using doing trades and all that stuff. Well, we just did the follow-up piece to that, what to do after week 8. So let's say if you're sitting at 7-1, 8-0, 6-2, and you're almost a lock for the playoffs, what do you do? If you're sitting at 5-3, 4-4, whatever, what do you do? And if you're all the way down at the bottom of the barrel, what do you do? So I like to do a lot of strategy pieces. That's kind of like how I've taught myself how to play this fun game. So that's what I do over at 4 for 4. And then I also write for Numberfire. So JJ Zacharyson and all those guys, Brandon Gadula, Jim Sonis, like those guys. I work with them over at Numberfire. I do the weekly like drop targets, so looking at snaps, touches, targets to figure out
we're going to get into that in the quarterback streaming here. That's the one.
And then I did the waiver wire list a couple weeks ago, where it was like 10 players you can like to be on your waiver wire ad list, and then also the WX portion that comes into my handle. I do the weekly weather report over at Numberfire. And that uses some like data that I've picked up that goes that looks back over the last 17, 18 years of actual NFL data, compares that to weather data in the area to look at trends. And I use that to kind of use the forecast data for that week's games, compare that to like historical data, like everything from like historical data like past years, and even since we've had a few bad weather games this season, to look at how teams have responded in those bad weather games. So you can find that over at numberfire.com. All
right. Well, let's start with the week 9 drops. Just because to me, dropping's important, especially waivers already ran maybe, or if you have waivers tonight. Obviously,
which I want to talk to you about that, like just real quick.
Sure.
So I know that the traditional thing is Tuesday night. Right. I mean, ESPN, Yahoo, even like my fantasy league, because I play over there on that platform. The traditional waiver day or evening is like Tuesday night, I guess early Wednesday morning. Right. Why don't we do Wednesdays? Is it just because if you do it on Wednesday night and the games are on, and there's a game on Thursday that be like too quick for fantasy managers to adjust and like reset their lineups? I never quite understood that. Like, why does it have to be on Tuesday night when we really don't know a lot after the Sunday games, especially if the Monday night game, somebody got hurt or whatever, and we have to make a decision? Why do we still do it on Tuesday nights? Why not Wednesday?
Well, I'm pretty sure it's the default on almost all the sites. I have played in a league before that did it on Wednesday, so I know you can change it.
Yeah.
And I would agree with you. I to be real honest, I think there's an advantage to the more intelligent player who's getting more information because they can use, if you're a player who uses analytics or numbers or stats or just information period, versus gut, I'm assuming if you're using your gut, what's the matter Tuesday or Wednesday, you're
right. Yeah.
You're just sorting by who scored the most points last week. And that's what I'm going to pick up.
Yeah.
Where I agree. The better player, I think would have an advantage waiting one more day where you get more, information as far as injuries and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Especially in leagues where you've just got,
like short benches.
Well, no, just a one-time waiver wire, meaning you have the waiver, you have waivers every night, but only for people who are dropped, meaning Tuesday's the only night where everyone's on waivers. And then after that, everyone's on free agent. Hey, why not wait one more day?
Yeah.
Because then the free agent thing is, now the waiver is a little more important because there's a less day to even pick up free agents. And
right. Because nobody really practices on Tuesdays, so you can't get really much in terms of, if somebody's hurt or they're just taking the day off. I mean, by Wednesday, unless you're a veteran, most guys should be out there doing something. So I would think most folks would wait until Wednesday. I don't know if maybe that's just me.
You don't even get MRI information a lot of times. Somebody got hurt Friday or Monday night or Sunday night. Usually still Tuesday when you're setting your waivers, you don't know yet.
Unless it was like a concussion and they're knocked out of the game, or they get carted off or whatever. I mean, only in extreme situations are you really going to have at least a decent feeling that they're not going to play the next week. But otherwise, you're just left waiting.
Right. Now we did a show where we did like 6 shows on how to do the perfect league. Yeah. I think we talked a lot about waivers and how to do it, but I don't think we ever decided what night.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Yeah, that might be something that we would consider. Me personally, my preference would be that they run on Wednesday night.
Right. I can't see the negative. Now, as a fan, let me answer that as a fan now. I can't wait for Tuesday. Tuesday's the first day. No, I mean, really, that would be my problem with it. If I have a problem with it, it would be, man, I have to, I hate, I like doing waivers first before I do a lot of trade. There's something about knowing what you've got to work with before you make trades.
Yeah.
And all that. So part of me just can't wait for Tuesday because, everything's going to happen that one day.
Yeah.
But even saying that out loud now, you know what? It would give you Tuesday maybe to work more trades. And then based on the trading, kind of do the opposite. Now, based on what your trade was, now maybe what you need off of the waivers or don't need. Because you were able to work a trade. Now you don't need that guy you thought you were going to pick up. On the waivers. So,
or maybe the compromise is, okay, so instead of waiting until Wednesday night, Thursday morning, how about sometime like Wednesday afternoon? Because for Scott Fishbowl, the waivers process Wednesday at, I think it's like 1 p.m. Eastern is when either 1 or 2 p.m. Eastern is when waivers process in SFB. So, I mean, maybe that's the compromise. Instead of doing it like late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning, you just wait until Wednesday afternoon.
Okay, the argument of that as a fan would be the middle of a Wednesday afternoon. Again, I'm basing it on that most leagues, just have a set free agency after the first waiver. And if it ends at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, obviously people like me who are in front of a computer all day have an advantage. There's obviously now more free agents where if it rolls at 3:30 or 4 in the morning, I've been known to wake up that time knowing I needed to grab a few free agents because I didn't want to use my waiver pick. Yeah. And there's some people willing to do that and some not, but at least you can say, okay, everybody has the same shot at that time in the morning. If you're willing to get up, get up. Yeah, where if it's just at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, if you have a job where you're not accessing a computer, that would kind of limit it you a little bit. But then again, you could also do it, I guess, Wednesday at 8 o'clock at night, assuming everyone's off work and now let it roll. Again, I don't see the negative, to be real honest. Why you wouldn't do it.
I might have to, I might see if I can move it in some of my leagues just to test it out.
Now, you really should, I don't think you can move it the middle of the season, right?
I'm saying for next year.
Right.
Yeah. For next year. I got one of my leagues to convert to Superflex. Right. So that was great. So now I'm gonna we'll just keep pushing the envelope. I will mold it.
Are we now bantering instead of talking about your article?
You're right. I got us off track.
But okay, because me and you have always said we've done this for 2 years, and me and you have fun, and we don't really care. we care, but it's like, okay, me and we have fun. That was a great hour. I learned a lot. Chris learned a lot, and yeah.
But we're good. I mean, it's only 20 minutes in, and we're actually getting to the relevant news.
Kinda, maybe, because but it's hard. It's hard because me and you both have talked. There's not a lot of face-to-face in my everyday life where I get to talk fantasy with somebody else who wants to talk fantasy. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so when me and you get on for an hour, I'm like, this is, I part of me is just like, hey, me and Chris get to talk fantasy for an hour. Mm-hmm. Now that I have a few more shows and I do a few other things. Now, me and Lou do the sit start on Sunday.
Yeah.
That we don't do any banter much because it's questions. We had over 300 people this last Sunday show.
Good Lord.
Either watched or downloaded or streamed it or were there live. We pretty much had questions in the chat room the whole time. So me and Lo don't really get a banner much. We have to answer the questions. So, that's
I do not, man, that gives me like cold sweats. That's too many people.
Well, it's good that we have people that want to answers, or at least.
Well, yeah, you guys are way better at this than I am.
My Tuesday night League of Anarchy podcast, which is my main home league. Now we're doing a podcast, and I really thought there'd be 4 or 5 of us maybe that would get on a regular basis. Last week we had 8. This week I can only have 10 people in the video chat at the same time. We had somebody who couldn't get in. We had 11 of our 12. Have you ever been in a league that would have maybe 11 people show up to anything to communicate during the season other than the draft, maybe?
Yeah. Other than the draft, no.
Right. So we have that. That's how right now we have really, this league right now is hopping. Now the problem is it's hopping. We got a lot going on, a lot of activity, but we've also had some problems. And but some of that's been good. Our communication is better, so the problem is getting solved.
Okay.
That's been kind of fun. But at the same time, you still, even when you have problems in a league, do you ever expect to have 11 people show up on a video chat at the same time? Meaning we all just show up. I mean, and we did last night. We only had one person not show up, so that was kind of unique. So it's just. That's why it's going to be hard. I know. I can already tell that what we're doing. It's going to be hard for us not to banter a little bit. Now, hey, hopefully we say something in our banter that is educational or make somebody think or make someone change their, waiver times and or at least make them say, huh, and go from there. So enough of the banter.
Let's do this.
Enough of the banter. Let's get into your drops. Your drop article, which your drop article, just so I don't get it wrong, it drops where? When you the drop article is on which site?
Number Fire.
Okay.
That comes out also on Tuesday.
So and this is based on who to drop through week 9 after week 8, correct? Based on what we read. It's so let's go first of all with your week of review of week 8.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming these are people because I did not read this article last week. So I'm assuming.
Yeah, those are the guys that I recommended that they drop after week 7.
Right. And you recommended, which to me worked out perfectly if you did it. I don't think a lot of smart players had him, but Josh Gordon is someone you recommended to drop.
Yeah, that worked out.
I think that did work out. The fan of me says if you're in a deep league, got a lot of roster spots, he could come back in a few weeks and maybe in a better spot. I know this is a drop article, but are you a pick him up at any time soon person, or you're just gonna?
Okay, I say no because I'm trying to think of like teams around the league that right now that are in winning positions, but that need a wide receiver. Like it's hard for me to envision a team around the league right now. I'm trying to think of just in the NFC. So we've got. I mean, other than
just so I know, he doesn't have to be traded, right? The odds are he's going to go.
No, he'd be released.
Yeah, released.
Yeah,
he doesn't have to go through the waiver system, right?
Or no.
Okay, I thought he had to go through waivers, but you're saying
I don't think so because
he would just be released and he can sign where he wants to go.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's what. So I'm trying to think of the best case scenario for him.
Buffalo. He's going to Buffalo then. But normally New England does this to everyone else in their division. This is a time for Buffalo, who is competitive, has a chance to beat New England, could use a wide receiver, but more than that, they're going to get someone that's on the inside and have some information. He's going to Buffalo.
I mean, I guess, but again, it would be tough for me to actually wind up for that to be a benefit to them, because the reason I say that is because Josh Gordon wasn't separating from cornerbacks the way that he used to in years prior. He wasn't blowing past anybody. So I know a lot of folks would say that, Josh Allen, deep ball or whatever, but Josh Gordon really wasn't getting those deep balls to begin with. But
he has size and he has hands, and they already have John Brown to stretch the field. I'm saying they would do it for more reasons than just that he could help them on the field. I think they could use an extra wide receiver. And if they sign him at the right price, I think they get a bonus, because they still have to deal with New England, hopefully, and probably at this point in the playoffs, maybe. And I think they have one more game together. I think there's a benefit for them more than just his skill level. He wouldn't be their number one, maybe, or he definitely wouldn't be their number one, maybe not even his number two, but he brings another value. When I heard it the other day, that's the first team that came to my mind that could kind of use somebody that at least has some hands. And I know that defensive coordinators pay attention and they know he's slowed down a step, but they still have to guard Josh Gordon, because he is going to catch the ball. Meaning, if you aren't paying attention, he's going to catch a ball if it's thrown to him. He's not going to drop a bunch or anything like that. So that's my only team I ever even thought about. So what other teams are around that have you had in your mind that could use his skills? Because to me, they are minimal.
The Rams.
Yep. Because of Cooks being hurt.
Yep.
And the fact, same thing. They have two other guys to keep, meaning you still have to play him one-on-one, pretty much, because they have other people. All right. I would say, and the Rams is a team that might think they might have to, play New England in the end of the playoffs.
Yeah. Cause I'm just thinking like NFC, and because I'm trying to get out of the AFC and just looking at NFC teams, good NFC teams that run a wide receiver friendly scheme that could use a field stretcher, or at least somebody that can do the intermediate to deep if they could get schemed open properly. And the Rams, I think, would be the best bet. I mean, San Francisco would be great, but they use more of a running back, heavy scheme. They've been using Marquise Goodwin. They already have a field stretcher, and he hasn't been getting a ton of targets as it is. So,
see, my other thought is also with Buffalo is weather plays a part in it. Meaning, the two places you just named are warm weather, and your speed does play a part. And if he's lost a step, that gives the backs a little bit of, they can keep up with him. But in Buffalo, where the weather's going to be crazy and all that, now the fact you add someone who, maybe he's lost his step, but the weather plays in his benefit. Maybe a little bit of snow on the field, a little bit of whatever, because he still is going to catch the ball. You get it close to him. That skill didn't go away. He just wasn't getting open enough for Tom Brady. But I don't know. I said Buffalo's still been in my head, which, to be honest, that's why if I had a deep bench and was rolling the dice and, that kind of thing, I would maybe consider. Delaney Walker was someone who recommended to drop after week 7. That a good call. Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm assuming this is based on a one quarterback league.
Yes.
He hasn't, they do a lot, but he doesn't seem to do a lot. Does that make sense? I don't know.
They scored 51 points last week, and he still had he was still quarterback 18 on the week, or so. He didn't do much of anything.
Right. And is that what you were basing it on, dropping him, is just the fact that
that's been a continued trend. Throughout the entire season, I think he's been in the QB1 conversation once this entire season. Just off the top of my head. So even in a game where the 49ers score 51 points and your quarterback only accounts for 8, and he still threw an interception. So if he's still turning the ball over, but not really contributing much as a passer, and he doesn't run, I mean, there's really not a ton of upside for me there.
He ran before he got hurt. He was actually running when he got hurt.
Right, and that was part of the problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it could be that this year he's, trying to reacclimate himself to, I mean, Shanahan's scheme, and then just not try to overstress the knee. It could be, a number of those things. But at the same time, I mean, we want production now. I mean, unless you're holding him, if you're holding him in a dynasty league, sure, continue to work with them and see how things progress in 2020. But for right now, he's not really doing that much for you. So if you're in a one quarterback redraft league, I mean, why haven't you gone and picked up? I mean, I know Kirk Cousins didn't do much this past week, but why not him? Why not Matt Stafford?
Right. Well, we'll get into quarterbacks here in a minute. So now let's go for your drop candidates for this week. Again, if your waivers haven't run, obviously these are things to concern. And I'm obviously interested in this first person because, not him in general, just that whole offense as far as the backfield. And 77% owned in Yahoo. You're recommending that you can now drop Chase Edmonds. Is this just because of the injury or because of the way the offense is running?
A couple of those two things.
And there's two running back.
Right.
That was one of the big trade maybe of the trade 24-hour period.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's that. I mean, so the trade for Kenyon Drake, David Johnson is he's, I guess, questionable to play tomorrow. So he's already on his way back. I know there are rumors about him that, they were thinking maybe he was going to wind up on IR. I know even yesterday there was thoughts of him possibly being traded. But either way, I mean, none of those things wound up happening. And so we've got David Johnson coming back. Kenyon Drake is there. They've got Zach Zenner. They've got Alfred Morris. I mean, they're carrying 5 running backs at the moment. So if Chase Edmonds is already out for this week, they've said he's going to miss a couple more weeks. They're playing the 49ers tomorrow night. Then they're on bye. They're playing the 49ers, then the Buccaneers, who are another team that you can't run on. And then they're playing the 49ers again in week 11. And then they have a bye in week 12. So that's 4 straight weeks of either bad matchups or he's just not available. Why carry him?
Right.
Well, I mean, why carry him? And then actually in week 13, when they come back off bye, they're playing the Rams. Yeah. So what's the purpose in carrying him? I mean, I guess if you own David Johnson and you want the handcuff, okay, I guess I can understand that strategy.
Yeah, but he's not healthy. He's not the handcuff right now. I mean,
he's not even the handcuff at this point.
And if Kenyon Drake has 1 or 2 good weeks,
he could wind up being the handcuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's not an asset that I would say that you have to hold on to at this point in the season. I mean, you can let him go for, I mean, any of the running back pickups from this week, Mark Walton, Jalen Samuels. I mean, any of those guys that can wind up getting some more volume.
All right. The next one, D.D. Westbrook, 76% owned in Yahoo. You know what? I have him in more than one league. I still think it's been injuries. I really had high hopes, for him the last few weeks. It looked like maybe things were turning around a little bit. They were throwing the ball to him a lot.
Yeah. Shoulder, I guess a shoulder injury, I could kind of wrap my head around and say that, okay, maybe you just need some time off. But they're saying shoulder and neck injuries. I mean, and they just put Marquise Lee on IR yesterday.
Which even made it nicer for me, meaning if Westbrook just gets healthy, he definitely would get the targets.
Right, but he got pulled from Sunday's game and he never returned. He didn't practice at all last week before the game started. So to me, it's just looking like this is going to be something that even if he does play next week, I mean, the chance of that happening again is definitely on the table.
I started him this week in a league.
Oh, people played him in DFS this week.
I started him over David Montgomery.
Ooh.
But I still won.
Okay.
I still won 212 to 200.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, and that was by taking. I think I got a 0.2 out of him. He didn't even get me a point. He got me 0.2. So I don't know. And unfortunately, that's a league where I am very shallow at wide receiver. I have 3 good ones and a couple guys on my bench, and he's one of them.
Right.
I figured during bye weeks with as many targets as he was getting. Quickly, who would you pick up wide receiver wise? Who would be one of your pickups wide receiver wise now that maybe you would pick up instead of him?
Chris Conley seemed to do just fine last week.
Yeah.
I mean, in his place. And then Keelan Cole came in right behind him in the slot.
This is a keeper league. Chris Conley was picked up. I already checked. That was one of my waiver moves yesterday, and he was already picked up. But
yep. You can check to see if Christian Kirk was still on the waiver wire. Some folks might have dropped him, like when he was out for, I think he was out for 3 weeks or almost 4 weeks.
Now, maybe you'll laugh or make fun because, again, I did this from gut, not analytics. I picked up David Funches and put him on my IR spot, which was empty.
That's actually a good move because he just started practicing last week.
That's what I thought. So I picked him up. And, they've had, their tight ends still get the ball a lot, but they've, I don't know. That was my pickup. I didn't drop Westbrook, but I knew I couldn't use Westbrook. So I was looking for a wide receiver. And that was, one of the picks that I thought, well, I'll go that route and, and I picked up who's the rookie Oakland Renfro.
Hunter Renfro.
Yeah, I picked him up. Unfortunately, I hate to say that I did it based on numbers last week, but there was so
got a good matchup this week, so why not?
Yeah, and again, I don't need to play him, but if he has 2 or 3 in a row, and I have a few bye weeks, I have my bye weeks. I get hit hard in week 11 and 12 with my wide receivers because I have Kansas City and Green Bay wide receivers, and
that'll do it. Yeah.
So I'm hoping just 1 or 2 of these guys. I'm hoping I'm in the lead enough in this league where I don't have to win in week 11 or 12, maybe.
Sure.
But I would hope maybe a Westbrook or a Funches, somebody can get me 10 or 12.
Yeah.
The next one, which I hate to see on here too, Chris, Tariq Cohen. Talk about a running backfield, and I already mentioned Montgomery. This flipped in a hurry. He's owned 61%, which I thought was low anyway. I would have thought he should have been until last week anyway. I'm sure a lot of people did drop him, but I would have thought, week 5, you would look up and Tariq Cohen would be owned in 85-90% of leagues.
Yeah.
But now at 61%, you're recommended he's a drop. You would, in a PPR even?
Because, can you even bank on him getting any targets at this point? That offense is just a complete mess.
Well,
there was a game, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks. It might've been week 5 or week 6 where he had 12 targets, I think, in a game. Yeah. But then after that, after Mitch Trubisky came back after their bye, it was down to 1 target, 2 targets, and he's not getting anything in the running game. He might have like a rush attempt or 2.
The only thing good about it, I still feel in the one league I owe him still is they're still losing playing that way. So part of me thinks, okay, they might go, well, hell, we're losing that way too. Let's go back to throwing the ball a little bit and see if our quarterback's going to be a keeper next year. I think that's where they might go, hopefully, if you own him. But
I don't know. Because after Matt Nagy press conference after they lost this past week, it just looks like he has no trust in Mitch Trubisky as a passer. He is just completely spinning his wheels in terms of what they're going to need to do in order to win games. And it's just, I don't want to trust. The only players that I would trust in offense at this point, maybe David Montgomery and Allen Robinson, and that's about it. I wouldn't want to put any stock in any of the ancillary players.
I agree. Don't think I could start Cohen right the moment, but it would be hard for me to drop him yet in a PPR. But I do understand your analytic information there makes him somewhat droppable. And I'll put, again, the fan in me, someone who listens on the podcast, I do listen to a lot of shows that just do say, oh, he's a drop, and then don't tell you who to pick up or don't even tell you, okay, no, he's only a drop, in my opinion. Any drop is only a drop if you have a better option, meaning you don't just drop him. Well, you say sure, but there's, a lot of Aunt Mildred's and Uncle Bob's that just, I just dropped him. I've seen people just drop people and now they have a hole in their bench and don't even pick up anybody, just because I just sick of seeing that guy.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. You don't drop a Tariq Cohen unless you have, someone to pick up. Mark, would you pick up Mark Walton over Tariq Cohen?
I would. Yeah. I would.
I do like.
No, I can't start anybody from Miami with any confidence.
Well, isn't that what we're talking about? Who would you have more confidence in starting this week?
Well, yeah, I would have confidence in
Walton
starting
or
Walton because at least the reason why I said I wouldn't have confidence in starting Mark Walton because he plays for the Miami Dolphins. But at the same time, I could start Mark Walton in confidence over Tariq Cohen because I know Mark Walton's actually going to get some volume.
Yeah, they proved on Monday night he is a 3-down back, and that's rare. Even on the good teams, that's rare.
Yeah.
So a 3-down back on a crappy team, Leonard Fournette, shows that, if a 3-down back anywhere, and I think Fitzpatrick helps too. Now, my concern there is how long do they roll with Fitzpatrick and then still go?
I think
you don't think
he'll probably be.
You think they're convinced they need a quarterback? They don't have the future quarterback of Miami is not on Miami.
I think so. I think they're pretty much that because if you can, the way that Fitzpatrick has been playing, and with the way that like I know that Brian Flores wants to like pretty it up and like say all these like nice things about what Fitzpatrick does for the team and gives them the spark, whatever. But Rosen, I think at this point has shown that he's been dealt a bad hand and he hasn't been able to adjust to a situation, and to not even be able to put up at least a decent amount of points or yardage totals or string together drives or whatever. I think it's going to be a tank for two type situation.
Again, you know me, I always think of weird things when things happen. Andy Dalton, buy some 200 PFS sun lotion. You might be the Miami Dolphins quarterback next year.
Yeah.
I'm saying, wouldn't surprise me. Would it surprise you if Andy Dalton is the Miami Dolphins quarterback next year?
Wouldn't. I mean, I hope that's a whole other conversation, but I hope Andy just finds another place to play. I'll just leave it at that for now.
I've heard people from Chicago to say they would have loved to have traded this weekend, got Andy Dalton if they thought he was available.
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, well, let's get through this and then we got time. Right. We'll talk about it.
Kiki Kuti, that should be pretty quick because to me he's not been healthy. I dropped him a while back actually. Mm-hmm. So that was on it. Your last one on here is concerning trends, meaning 90% owned. Larry Fitzgerald. I guess that means you're not saying drop him necessarily yet,
right?
But you probably can't play him yet, right?
Yeah, that was like I reserve that section for I reserve that section for players that you can't drop them because they're either already starters on your team or they're just so universally owned that they at least probably have some value in maybe like a low ball trade or whatever, like selling them on the low. So I think a couple weeks back I'd put Damian Williams on there like 1 week. I forget who else, other people that I've put on there, but yeah, for Fitz, he's done this before where he starts off the season hot, 10 targets, 9 targets, 11 targets. But I mean, the man is I think he's 3 months younger than I am. I think I know he's 36, yeah, but I want to say he's either a few months older than I am or a few months younger than I am. But either way, I mean, once you get into the middle of the season, yeah, that man's tired. So, and to see his targets drop off to the point where I think he just had 2 or 4. Yeah,
but to me, that still seems like an offensive problem, not necessarily. Maybe he's lost his step, or maybe, but I just don't think they're throwing balls like he's normally catching. They're not looking in the middle of the field. Murray's running around.
He's primarily in the slot, and that's where people have beaten the Saints. I mean, he was going up against a backup slot cornerback, and still only managed 4 targets and 2 catches. I mean, that's got to be concerning.
Yeah. Again, don't own him anymore anywhere. When I see something like you put him here as the question mark, to me, that's the guy you throw in on another trade.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of trading him, you trade somebody else. You try to convince somebody the trade's a better deal because you're going to throw in Larry Fitzgerald also.
You package him, and you get somebody back that you're looking for.
Yeah. So that the trade looks more even or less. I
mean, he's got enough name value that folks, just like you said, I mean, because I don't think at any point he's going to wind up riding the bench or going on IR or anything like that. Right. He's going to play. He's still seeing 80 to 90% of the snaps. And I think at some point, once the matchup hits right, he'll wind up popping up for 6, 7, 8, 9 targets again.
Right.
But when is that going to happen? I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen this week with San Francisco's athletic linebackers. It's probably not going to happen tomorrow night. And I think they have to play him twice. Or they still have to play him one more time? I think so.
I think they still have him twice. I think this is the first time they played him.
Yeah, so and they'll have 2 matchups against San Francisco. So when are you going to feel confident in starting him? So within the next few weeks for the playoffs.
Now again, Larry Fitzgerald would also be one of those guys. I would look at my weeks 12 and 11. There's a couple good wide receivers that are on buys those weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I would see who is St. Louis Cardinals. Who are the Arizona showing my age?
Right.
Who are the Arizona Cardinals playing those 2 weeks? Is that an option? Meaning, does he make him a little more valuable to hang on to? I do think if you dropped him, he'd get picked up.
Easily, yeah.
So if you put him at the bottom,
probably wind up picking him up.
Yeah, if he was at the bottom of your bench and you went, okay, good. I didn't because we were going to stay on script. I didn't pull up the schedule. I didn't think I would need one to see who Arizona plays in week 11, 12. But again, I know there's a lot of good wide receivers that are.
Oh, yeah, because we were just talking about the Cardinals. Yeah, because they play the 49ers tomorrow night, then the Buccaneers, so that should be a good matchup. And then they play the 49ers again in week 11.
All
They're on a bye in week 12.
Use him. Okay, so he's not okay, so he would not help you in weeks 11 and 12 as a bye week pickup because he's on bye himself and he plays the 49ers. So
so now would probably be the time to see if you can package him for a deal.
See, Chris, I gave you some more analytics to add. He's not even usable as a bye week.
But this is why we have these conversations, right?
Right. To get it out there.
Yeah.
All right. That article's your drop article.
Yep.
That shows up on Number Fire every Tuesday. So go to Number Fire. I'm assuming you can search Chris Allen. Articles will come up and you'll go from there. The next article, and again, we did kill some banter time, but we got about 15 minutes for our normal hour. Let's see how we do on the article. This is the 4 for 4. This is the number 4 for the word FOR for the number.com. Mm-hmm. To be honest, I mean, I'm not going to tell anybody. We're not, we don't get paid by anybody. I don't. But you can read half of the article for free. I'm just telling you that, guys. I mean, if you go for 4, you can read half the article. But I found for $29, you get a whole year. And I went back and read some of Chris's older stuff and all that. And I have now read a few other people's articles. The website's pretty professional looking. Photography's good. They have tools there.
John Paulson, our ranker, he is number 5 in the fantasy accuracy rankings. Number 5 overall for all rankers.
All right. Well, I'm just saying. So head that way, and then and what you do there is the streaming quarterbacks, which in single quarterback leagues is pretty popular now. I mean, at least for veteran players or more educated players. Streaming, it's almost a battle now of who's going to take the quarterback first and not commit to streaming than it is to wait and just commit to streaming, because everyone's waiting. And in a good league, even the better quarterbacks will drop to rounds 5 or 6. And then eventually I was going to stream, but I just can't pass up, Lamar Jackson here, and now you're not a streaming guy anymore. They're starting to force you not to be as much as you are. Let's review the week before the article. We kind of talked about it. You hit on almost everybody. It was a pretty good week for you.
Yes.
This week, it was not as good.
No, that is unfortunate.
There you go. It's unfortunate, but again, if you listen to enough people and you read enough stuff, everyone will tell you the same thing. You want to be right more often than wrong, but you are going to be wrong.
Oh, yeah.
It's just the way fantasy is.
I'll hold my L's. That's fine.
If we all knew the answers, it wouldn't be fun to play. It just wouldn't. If you played poker with the cards upside down, it wouldn't be as much fun, right?
I mean, it would make me feel better being right all the time, but at the same time.
But if you were right all the time, you wouldn't be sitting here with me reading articles.
I wouldn't be learning anything.
Even the best guys, the guys who make money gambling and stuff on this stuff, don't be right, but more than 50. I think the best guys are 52, 54% on.
I think when Sigmund Bloom, I think when he made it into, he was top 50 for 3 years running or something like that. But I think his accuracy rate, his rating was maybe 53% 53% or something like that.
So if you're over 50%, which means you are technically right more than you're wrong, but that does mean you're going to be wrong still, unfortunately, quite a bit. That's just the way it is. But that's back to why analytics become more important, meaning the numbers back up your information. Doesn't mean it's going to work out, but the numbers at least say this is what you should do. And then that way, if it doesn't work out, you don't have to beat yourself up because you did it by the numbers. Something I don't do,
right?
But still, it is that way. So the one you hit on was Ryan Tannehill. To be honest, I don't own any of the 4 quarterbacks here that you recommended, and I'm technically not streaming because I'm in a couple of 2 quarterback leagues, and then the one league I'm in with you, which you kicked my rump. Thanks to Jameis and Winston, because Matt Ryan was hurt. I should probably have streamed instead of Winston, but Jacoby Brissett, you were off a little bit, but he was our main guy the week before. And he had been doing pretty good in that offense.
That one was a big one because I went into that one knowing that that the matchup was bad. I mean, they were they were at home. Yeah, they were at home, weren't they? I'm pretty sure.
I did originally have the other article pulled up, but
let me double check that real quick. See.
But so while you're doing that, right? I'll just do it. So the 4 you had picked to stream last week was Brissett, Tannehill, Trubisky, and Rudolph. Mason Rudolph just struggled the first half. He actually got his stuff together.
Yeah, they were at home. Yeah, they were at home. I mean, they were still at home, which was fine. But the problem was, and going into it, was that Jacoby Brissett was highly efficient on touchdown passing. I mean, his touchdown rate was either like second or third, but the problem was that they were their pass to rush ratio, their pass rate was at like 50%, 52%, somewhere in there. So for him to continue,
just a hard number to maintain.
Yeah. So his touchdown rate was unsustainable. Their passing, the touchdown rate is unsustainable. Their passing rate was already low. And Denver has already started to play slow, especially under Joe Flacco. So there were all kinds of things just kind of working against him. And even though I knew that Chris Harris was going to shadow T.Y. Hilton, he still had a slew of other pass catchers in order to save his day. And it just, there was just too many things going against him. And when I saw Marlon Mack, was at least he got a touchdown and was still having a decent day, I knew it was all over after that. So did not work out. I mean, one of the lowest totals. He only passed it, I think, 25 times. Yeah, It's just a bad look.
All right. Well, that's fine.
And then also, I should have known it was going to be a bad week when Drew Brees came back because Teddy Bridgewater was my top streamer from last week. He was the number one guy that I had written up.
Right.
And so I knew it was going to be a bad week.
Now, and next week I want to get into this advanced fantasy points allowed stat and where that adjusted. Right. We're out of time tonight to get into it too much, but one of these shows when we're not bantering, I want to get into where your numbers come from and what you're doing and what you're using, because that might help me also. But since we're running a little late, let's just pop right into your streaming quarterback picks this week. Your top pick, and I like this one, Derek Carr versus the Lions. I tried to trade in my 2 quarterback league. It's hard to make a trade for quarterbacks, but I was trying to maneuver a little bit and maybe swindle Carr out to somebody. And actually, I was giving them. Actually, the trade was a little weird, but I was willing to give them Breeze. Yeah. Why? Because the 2 quarterback league, I needed to start another quarterback. And the guy who owned Carr, he was smart enough to say, no. Too good a matchup. I'd like to have Breeze, but not this week. I need to win. So, what do you like about Derek Carr this week, other than it's the Lions?
Well, it's part matchup, and also, so as of right now, the Raiders, they're 4th in yards per play, 8th in offensive DVOA, 9th in yards per pass attempt. So quietly, they've actually put together a string of pretty good games so far. And then on top of that, we look at the matchup. I mean, Detroit has been just giving up, just a ton of production through the air. Tyrell Williams is back, like after the injury. Darren Waller has been playing like fairly well, and even like the other part is, I guess, Josh Jacobs. Like while he's been doing like fine on the ground, he's not really been a part of the pass game. Even though like his pass catching acumen was really that big part of like his skill set that was featured during the draft. I mean, the guy was learning route running skills from Julio Jones. So, but he hasn't been involved in the pass game all that much. His shoulder injury that he was reported to have like throughout the week, I'm thinking that still is like I guess limiting him as like being on the field, because he was splitting more carries between DeAndre Washington and Jalen Richard, and I think in Alec Ingold, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Yeah, either way, that like he's been splitting the backfield touches like a little bit more over the past like couple of weeks, and especially last week. So it's just kind of forced them into this like pass heavy role. And Derek Carr's been able to answer the bell. I mean, he hasn't been turning over the ball a lot. Their offensive line has really been pretty solid. Hasn't taken a ton of sacks. So I mean,
I think a lot of people still forget he was an injury away from a shot at MVP just a couple years ago.
Right. Yeah. When he got hit in the back.
He's also not a bad quarterback. You know,
I don't know.
Wait a minute. You're saying what, again, the year he almost won the MVP, which was just 2 years ago, right? He had the leg injury at the end.
Yeah, I know, but people were saying
the playoffs.
I don't know. Andy Dalton was in the MVP conversation a few years ago, so I don't know if that really defines him as being like a.
I'd rather had Carr the last few years than Andy Dalton.
Well, me too, but I'm just saying like they've both been in the same conversation now. Like across his entire body of work, do I really think Carr is a good quarterback? I would probably put him at either at league replacement level or maybe just slightly above. I wouldn't say he's a good quarterback. I would just say
when I think of that, I think of. There's more teams that would be better with him than wouldn't. That's kind of what I judge a better quarterback. Meaning,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's right there.
But to me, that makes him if average or not. I just say you're a good quarterback in the NFL if half the teams would be better off with you. That means you're technically a top 16 quarterback in the world. I mean,
so that means average. That still means average. That's half average. I mean, it's
all right, Sam Darnold, speaking of average. This one I struggle with because he has struggled bad 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Even though it's the Dolphins. I thought the Dolphins defense much better than I thought for Monday night, or was Pittsburgh's offensive line? They were really
Mason Rudolph just sucks.
They were rushing him all night long. I mean,
Mason Rudolph sucks.
Okay, right. Oh, and I must have said it 3 times with my son sitting here. You know me. I kept saying, I can't watch game film because I don't know what I'm looking for. But I know he's holding the ball too long. Yes, I know he's looking for an opening rather than throwing the guy open.
His first interception, he was standing there for over 5 seconds and then threw the interception.
Yeah. Again,
god awful.
The good, which this is where I would say Carr will do. Carr will throw you open. Carr will throw the ball to a decent wide receiver where he's not open, but he knows if I put it in the right spot, this guy will be open. Definitely could tell that, he wasn't doing that. I mean, right. He wanted to see a lot of black shirt before he was throwing the ball.
He wasn't trusting what his eyes what he was processing on the field. And yeah, I think that's what gave rise to it. But also the guy that actually made the interception, Xavier Howard, he's on IR now. So they have nobody. Yeah. The Dolphins defense has really nobody of note. Right. That would wind up becoming really an issue for Sam Darnold. Right. So the only problem is the Jets offensive line, I think, is either ranked 30th or 31st according to Football Outsiders, pass protection, according to adjusted line yards. So and the Dolphins, they actually have they don't have a decent pass rush, but they might have one that can blow by the Jets porous offensive line. So there's a chance that unless they adjust their offensive scheme to include checkdowns to Le'Veon Bell, right, then they can wind up getting some sacks on Sam Darnold, or either checkdowns to Le'Veon Bell, checkdowns to Jameson Crowder, checkdowns to Ryan Griffin.
Is there also an advantage to Sam Darnold that knowing that his schedule is a little bit easier the next 2 weeks also? So even though you're getting for a streamer, you might get him for more than 1 week. Obviously, if he does good against the Dolphins, get some confidence.
Yeah, I think they still have the Dolphins twice. I think they're playing the Giants in week 10.
Right.
So that's at least 3 matchups right there. I think they play the Raiders at some point in that stretch. So, I mean, there's probably like, again, 4, 5, 6 games.
Right.
Like either extending into like up to or into the fantasy playoffs. He's fine.
Is his major problem young, or he's just not as good as we think?
Young, I would say just young. I mean, the way, like, because towards the end of last season, his pass completion, his completion rate was actually trending upwards. I just think it's more of having to, I mean, because he's had to switch to a new offensive scheme under Adam Gase. So, right. I mean, it's relearning the offense. He had the mono thing, the enlarged spleen. I mean, all that stuff. He had to take time off for that. So, I mean, there's just more things that he has to adjust to. He hasn't really had continuity yet.
Skills wise, he's better than Derek Carr.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, but you can't.
So he's just an average quarterback too. Then.
No, I would say at this point he's a below average quarterback because he's only played in 18 NFL games.
Okay.
Derek Carr has had a ton more than 18 NFL games. So you can't compare the two.
You're saying Sam Darnold at least has a chance to get better. Carr,
yeah, I think he has a chance to get better. I don't think his story has been written because he's only been playing for a year and a half or less than.
All right. I know you call this the deep streaming league pick because I thought when I saw it's against the Vikings, and that's Matt Moore.
Yeah.
And first of all, do we know Matt Moore is starting?
As of right now, he's still starting because Patrick Mahomes, while he was a limited participant in practice, he was still playing on the second team, like playing with the second team offense. He was behind Matt Moore in drills. So as of right now, the team is operating as if Matt Moore is playing. Now, what the doctors say and what Andy Reid decides are, that's completely different. But I think they're now at 6-2. I mean, they're a shoo-in for the playoffs at this point, unless, absolute catastrophe happens. So they don't need to push Patrick Mahomes back at this point. I would say if they were sitting even at 4-4, 5-3, and competing within that division, sure. Let's try and see if we can push them back.
I could be wrong, but isn't that game in Minnesota?
No, it's at home.
It is at home? Okay.
I'm 90% certain that it's at home.
All right. So Matt Moore you like.
I think it's less about Matt Moore and more about Andy Reid
and
his ability to scheme open, because we saw what they did. I mean, against Green Bay. I mean, not to say that Green Bay is this elite defense, but I mean, Green Bay's secondary has been fairly decent over the past, throughout this season so far. And so for Matt Moore, a guy that was coaching high school, up until just a few weeks ago, to come out of essentially out of retirement and then pass for 2 touchdowns in a professional NFL game. I mean, that says something to me.
Better than Derek Carr, I'm guessing.
Better than Derek Carr. I mean, but again, I mean, it's hard to if it was a different matchup. I mean, if they were playing against, let's say, the Jaguars or LA to an extent, especially New England. I mean, if Baltimore. I mean, if it was a different matchup, yeah, sure, I'd look elsewhere. But against Minnesota, I mean, Kirk Cousins should be able to put up some points, so that should put him in a negative game script, forcing them to pass.
Right through the ball.
Matt Stafford, Matt Stafford tagged them for 3 or 4 touchdowns. Carson Wentz tagged him for over 300 yards.
All right, your next guy is Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Why not? I mean, that could wind up. See, that game has sneaky shootout potential because both of the defenses suck. And at least with Sam Darnold, we know he has some decent weapons, right? Robbie Anderson, Lev Bell, and all those other guys. But then Ryan Fitzpatrick, he could uncork a couple to Preston Williams.
He's not afraid to throw the ball. He's
not afraid to throw the ball.
Opposite of Rudolph. Yeah, he don't need to see the color shirt he's looking for. He's just
don't care. He's just going to grip it and rip it. Yeah. So if that winds up being the case, I mean, that could wind up being I'd be surprised if that wound up happening, because we just saw, and this is just me, with my tinfoil hat, conspiracy theorist, that once the Miami Dolphins realized that they were up and they might actually win that game, I think that's when their defensive schematic kind of changed, and they wound up letting the Pittsburgh Steelers get ahead of them. When they called that zero blitz at the end of the first half, and then Deontay Johnson just kind of skipped into the end zone. Right. I think yeah, I still think that they changed up the defensive call, but whatever. Either way, I think that at least has some like shootout potential. Like on Fitzpatrick's side, I can honestly see somebody rostering Ryan Fitzpatrick and like Preston Williams in like a GPP lineup and winning a bunch of money this weekend.
All right, let's move real quick then. Quarterbacks that you need to consider, meaning you probably maybe in your opinion shouldn't start right the moment.
Mm-hmm.
You have Phillip Rivers. He's a gunslinger. I mean, I know it's not working out right the moment, but unless over everyone else we named, I still would start Rivers because he could have 400 yards versus anybody. You never know.
Yeah.
But Packers defense has been good. I'll give you that. So when you say reconsider, all the people you named, would you start any of them over Rivers, or would you still start Rivers before the streamers you mentioned?
Derek Carr for sure.
I would say that'd be the one I'd have to consider.
Yeah, Derek Carr for sure. Yeah, Sam Darnold, I would probably lean Rivers, but that's just because Rivers has been doing it for longer, and we just don't know. Then Matt Moore, I would still want Rivers, but reconsider is that section actually used to be just titled bench, and that to me that's just too definitive because I don't know your roster roster needs like who's on the waiver.
I think what you're saying there is think about this guy before you just
just like if you can find any of those streamers, or hell, if Matt Stafford or Kirk Cousins was still sitting out there on the waiver wire and you were still holding on to Phillip Rivers for whatever reason, pick those guys up.
Right, it's the think he may stink category.
There, I actually might change the name of that section. I might change it. Yeah.
So
I might change to
that. And then looking ahead, Sam Darnold, which I get it. We already kind of said that. Sam Darnold, if you're streaming anyway this week, maybe you just roll with him for a couple of weeks and see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see if he picks it up. He's been practicing in full because I know his non-throwing hand, his thumb.
Next week. Not this week. The following week is the Giants.
Yeah, he's got a splint on his thumb for his non-throwing hand. He's practicing in full. Doesn't sound like the toenail he got removed. That doesn't seem to be bothering him as much. He's battling through that. But either way, hopefully he can get right. These are two, really good matchups over the next couple of weeks that should allow him to do that. So my hope, this is definitely a process over results type of play.
All right.
You play the matchups. That's what streaming is. And with his ability that we've seen him to, possess in the past, he should be able to put up, some decent fantasy numbers, at least provide you a floor. I don't think he's going to completely bottom out like he did against the Patriots, I'm seeing ghost, -2 points, type of performance. My hope is he's sitting somewhere around 14, 15, 16 points, somewhere in there.
All right. We did it, Chris.
Boom.
We didn't go under an hour. We still went over an hour, but we had to draw a picture at the beginning to let everybody know where we're headed, and
I think we did well.
We did do well. We we have the guy that's writing the stuff. We might as well talk about it. So
sure,
we hope that helps, and that's what we're gonna do in the future. Everybody, we're gonna give you stuff you can. The other stuff we were doing, the news, the notes. There's a million podcasts that you can get that. There's a million websites you can get that. Yeah, we'll give you our opinion, but this you can only get here. Or 4for4 number fire, where you write the article.
Yes, sir.
This isn't just somebody's article we're taking and making our own. This is Mr. Chris Allen's article. And that is Chris Allen, or just Chris Allen, FFWX on Twitter. Following, and, pay attention to what he's dropping in his articles and all that. And again, I think it's going to work. We're going to fine tune it. We're going to get better.
We'll figure it out.
We're going to bring you Chris's articles live. We're going to bring the articles to life right here.
Yeah.
We may even change. We may even change the name of the show or the segment because now the Fantasy Fan Sportscast now has about 4 shows under that name. So it's almost more of a network. So we might just have to name this, something else, and we'll go from there because again, you guys asked for more Chris. I'm going to give you the whole hour of Chris. I'm only going to jump in when I have an opinion.
Uh-huh.
That's only going to be the only time. Only when I have an opinion.
I never have those.
Right. Right. So, Chris, I had a blast. It was fun. This was different, but we still got to have our we still got to talk football and keep it fantasy. Chris, thanks for coming on. People, thanks for listening. You can, I'm Easy Kill. That's EZ Kill at a Fantasy Fan. Shoot me a message, a note, a question if you liked what we did or not. And we're here every Wednesday at 10 o'clock. You can join us live on Facebook if you want. If you have questions, even there live, we'll post them up here. Chris, have a great week. Good luck with your fantasy. I'm not playing you this week now. You already kicked my butt. You are in first place, and I'm now like in fourth. So my time's coming. I have 4 players on bye this week, so my team's about to bottom out. It'll happen. Yeah, it's coming for me. Regression will hit. There you go. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming out and joining us, and we'll see you next week. Chris, say goodnight.
This has been Just a Fantasy Fan podcast. And to keep your fantasies going, follow us at justafantasyfan.com. Say goodnight. Good night.